Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Hibiscus or Admin Hibiscus or Yuzuki Hibiscus or whatever you want to call me with. You're currently listening to my podcast, which is Hibiscus Cafe Break. On this podcast, I will be inviting different guests, which they will select a theme and I'll research it and we will talk about our favorite Takazuka things. I have Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. If you haven't followed, I suggest that you do. If you want to have more Yuzuka content, which my handle is YUZUKAHIBISCUS. I also have a public Twitter account, which is Updates of Ray, UPDATESOFREI, to update text and link updates of Ray. Also subscribe to my channel and like this video if you like the episode. Please note that the name Hibiscus Cafe Break is with due respect to the original show Takazuka Cafe Break, and this is a fan-made podcast with no intention of receiving commercial revenue, rather to promote Takazuka review in a casual and informal manner. I do not own any of the resources that may be featured, and any mentions of the shows or seto are subject to copyright from Hankyu Railway, Takazuka Review, and Takazuka Creative Arts Publications. Without further ado, let the podcast begin. Hello everyone, welcome back to Hibiscus Cafe Break, and this should be the 16th video, episode 15 of Hibiscus Cafe Break. After having two OG interviews from the previous 3 episodes, today we have another guest here. And maybe for my first question, can you please introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hello, my name is Hailey, otherwise known as Unanswered Zuka, and I am so happy to be here. Thank you again, Hibiscus, for having me as a guest.
Yeah, no problem. And maybe another thing as a warm-up, you could share about a TMI of yours today, because I am aware you are now like in the morning, so maybe you could share something funny or interesting to the audience.
Sure. Yeah, it's currently 10 a.m. here where I live in the United States, so I know the time difference is pretty big. A TMI about today, I almost brought my cat to the studio with me. She likes to travel with me, so I left her at home today, but I'm a cat person and almost brought her here with me today.
I see. It would be interesting to also have another guest, which is Hailey's cat, but it's all fine. We can also have you as well. So maybe you could also ask me a question if you have anything to ask.
Sure. What what is the weather like where you are right now?
Okay, it's 10 p.m. in Hong Kong right now, so it's pretty calm, but I would say like summer days in Hong Kong is not to be underestimated. Like even though you turn on the AC, it still feels like you haven't turned on anything. So it's pretty hot here. So that's how I would describe the weather. Yeah. So in that case, could you help us like read the title call?
Sure. Hibiscus Cafe Break open.
Yay. Okay, so there goes our warm-up question. So once again, introducing Hailey. She's from the United States, and today we're going to be talking about 2 themes. So the first one is related to the previous Cosmos Trip performance, which is Casino Royale, My Name is Bond, and also secondly about, well, her oshi, or also her favorite girl, which is Takato Chiaki-san, or also known as Kari. So since this is your first time here on the podcast, maybe you could share about how you knew about Takazuka and what you feel about Takazuka in general.
Sure. Yeah, this is something I never get bored about, like talking to people about kind of your intro, your upbringing into Takazuka, so to speak. And I mean, I would say mine is pretty similar to many international fans. I discovered Takazuka through social media. I had found an edit through the app TikTok, and I know some people are like, oh, like I've also found edits through TikTok. So I know some people can relate to that. But I found, we'll see, my 2-year anniversary will be in December. So it was around December time when I found that edit. And then it was just a spiral from there, researching, just diving deep. And then it came full circle because I met you through YouTube. I was like, whoa, like, then you introduced me to Hanagumi Troop and Yuzukare-san. And it just, you have been like my number one since day one. So I'm very, very thankful and very appreciative of you. So thank you.
those are very kind words, but also thank you so much. And also thank you for not finding me annoying, because sometimes when I give like a introduction of Takazuka, it is a lot of things. So thank you for not finding me annoying. So
No, you're
yeah. So apart from Hanagumi Flower Troop, you started moving towards observing other troops, which include like Soragumi, which is Cosmo Troop. And then there you
mhm.
find, well, quote unquote, the love of your life, or your Oshi girl, which is Takato Chiaki-san, Kari. So can you share us about like how you discovered her, or why do you think, oh, this is the girl I will stand?
Sure, yeah, and like I said, this is something as well. I mean, I could talk about Takato-san for hours, and I would be annoying, but I bear people. I'm like, I'll spare you a little bit. I won't bash my girl and be blushy, but yeah, I discovered her. Actually, there was a photo of one of her portraits from Never Say Goodbye, where she's wearing like the dark green military style scarf. And I saw it, and I think it was posted on her birthday. I was like, whoa, like she looks really cool. Like I have a few of those scarves. I'm like, she looks really, really cool. And then like time goes by, and I start to dive more into the Soragumi troop, and I start to notice her more. And the performance that really stuck out for me with her that I watched of hers was her Shinko lead of Ocean's 11. That was really like my shining moment of like, wow, like she's awesome. Like her vocal power, her confidence. And then I started to, kind of deep dive into her history, watching interviews, Taka Wiki, reading more about her, and just her gap. Like in interviews, she's super kind of like reserved, shy, a little nervous. But like on stage, she brings this almost like kind of silent confidence. I'm like, how can one person do that? That's amazing. So that's kind of my discovery, and I knew immediately. I was like, yeah, I'm falling face first for her. So yeah.
I see. Yeah, you mentioned about like her Shinko, which is like her newcomer's performance lead for Ocean's 11. And the original role was played by Makaze Suzuho-san. So from your
Mhm.
memory, did you remember why this struck you as so amazing? Like in terms of how she portrayed her Danny Ocean, or like, I don't know, her aura. Like how is it so unique to like Makaze-san's original interpretation?
Well, I mean, a fun fact, Takato-san is actually, she is very inspired by Makaze-san. Like Eureka is really her big role model. Obviously, being an upperclassman and a doki, she really, really inspired to like kind of follow in her footsteps, so to speak. And I think for Takato-san with Ocean 11, it was one of those things where, I mean, she did everything kind of to a T. She wanted to, you know, not leave anything behind, but also make that impression of like, okay, Makaze-san boosted it up to this level. I want to get to that level as well. So I think all in all, Makaze-san is very inspiring for Takato-san, and I think that's why she did a fantastic job with Ocean's 11 as a Shinko lead.
Nice. Actually, I will have to admit that I haven't seen that yet, but maybe after maybe after the episode I should, because that really got me convinced, and I would be very interested. And if I am not mistaken, I remember the Shinko female lead should feature Yumeshiro Aya-san, if I'm not mistaken, which is the current Snow Troop top Musumiyaku. So I would be
Mhm.
interested to watch that maybe after the podcast. So yeah,
Yeah.
anyway. Mhm. So yeah, we mentioned about Makaze-san, and actually we're going to go right into it now because we will be talking about her graduating performance, which is Casino Royale. Which Casino Royale, as the name implies, it really talks about like the so world-renowned spy from MI6, James Bond, and this performance was performed in, March to June 2023. Did you
Mhm.
remember when it was announced like Takazuka is doing a show about James Bond? Like, what was your first impression? Were you surprised? Were you shocked? How did you feel?
I was actually a little like excited. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be really cool. It's going to be kind of a westernized style because I mean, if anybody thinks of James Bond or 007, it's more of a westernized film, and they have like video games, movies, books. Um, Being from the United States, I mean, I know of James Bond and like the 007 franchise. I've watched a few movies here and there, but when the announcement came out, I was actually really excited. I'm like, okay, this is kind of full circle in a way, because if you think of Ocean's 11 and now James Bond and the similarities they share, I was like, okay, Ocean's 11 was a huge hit for Mikaze-san as a top star. It really left a great impression with Soragumi fans. And now, as for her Titan performance, it almost seemed full circle for me, at least. And I don't know if any other fans could agree, but I think it was a fantastic performance for her Titan.
That's so true because, as you mentioned, also this was like the Titan performance for Makaze-san, and from the image that Soragumi has produced, they call themselves the new troop. After all, they started like their troop was established in 1998, and so stepping into 2023, it's their 25 years only. But then over these years, they have tried so many adaptations, even Western movie adaptations, and so-called like James Bond, which is so renowned by the global audience. And I'm sure this also interested me because I was like, what's actually better than Ocean's 11 is, well, actually, I wouldn't say James Bond is better, but at least it does really hit on such a global scale that it has been a Hollywood film, and it has been having these films like for a long time, from like its novel, and then they have like a series. So it was just so amazing to see. And also for this performance, apart from Makaze-san's Tairan, it was also similarly Jun Hana's Tairan, which is
Mhm.
Kano-chan. So when you heard that this performance was actually going to have the top combi Tairan, not just Yurika, how did you feel? Because it would mean a change of another era, right?
Right. And I mean, you asking that question just kind of brought back those similar emotions when I read that news article about the top combi, they're tightening together. Man, it hit hard for me. I was like, wow, this is really happening. I did cry a little bit as a Soragumi fan, because I don't think anybody really expected uh, Kano-san to Titan this early. I mean, technically, I mean, her career, she still had a very youthful career. I could have seen her putting in maybe another 4 or 5, maybe 6 years. But I think I have very high respect in many aspects for her tightening alongside Makaze-san, because you can just see the respect, the love, and the admiration that she had for her. I mean, not only as a combi, but just as a person in general. I mean, like photos and graphs and online and little interviews that they've had together, and just the way she admires and respects Mikaze-san is very admirable.
Exactly, as you mentioned, like it's so interesting to see. And also, I think you do agree. Like, if I have to describe Jun Hana-san, it would be that she's bubbling with a lot of energy. Like, I have not seen someone so cheerful around her. I mean, yes, I have, but she is exceptionally cheerful beside Makaze-san. Like, even Yurika-san said, like, she was like the queen of emojis, like just complimenting her for giving so much reactions. And it was just so satisfying to watch how she can be so flattered or so fascinated by Makaze-san's whole presence. And it also moved me because when I saw the tie-dye press conference, because the top combi will have a press conference announcing their graduation, and
Mhm.
Jun Hana said that she wore the earrings that Yurika-san gave her on the day. And I was like, okay, it's a declaration of love. This is not a tie down. It's a declaration of love. And it's, yeah, it would be sad also because considering she is from the 102nd class, which means she debuted in 2016, and to have her tie down in 2023, which means she only has around 7 years in Takarazuka and only about 1 to 2 years as a top Musume in Cosmos Troop. But definitely, I do enjoy seeing their dynamics a lot. And
Mhm.
during that time, I have also watched like the previous Cosmos Troop performance, just to immerse into the feels when I get to watch it later. So I do agree with what you said.
Hmm.
And yeah. And then also, apart from the announcement of James Bond, let's also talk about like Kari. She got a role called, I believe it was pronounced Ilya.
Hmm.
So what was your first impression on that? Because it's a very interesting name. It's not something so common, but do you remember how you felt about it when you saw the name? Or were you like expecting a lot for your girl or something?
Yeah, I when I heard her role announcement, I immediately kind of took to the internet because I mean, like I said earlier, I'm not a huge James Bond fan. I'm like, okay, I wonder if there's like any characters in the past books or the movies with that character name. So obviously did a little research, didn't really come up with anything. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be kind of a mystery role. She's either going to be one of like the good guys or one of the bad guys. And come to find out, I won't spoil much for those who haven't seen it. Her role was actually very fantastic. I wish it had a little bit more time, but the time that she did have, she absolutely nailed it, and it was fantastic to see. So I'm super proud of her, and it was a very good role for her.
Agree. I do agree on the screen time part because when I watched it, I was like, why is she barely here? But I do get it. I do get it. It's just about like the dynamic of the show and how they want to focus on the plot lines. So yeah. And then later on, like in May, which is almost towards the Tokyo live stream, like the last day, we call it Senshuraku. Suddenly, Beyond Live, which is a live streaming platform, they announced that they will be partnering with Takarazuka Review to have like a subbed stream exclusively in 8 languages from, English, traditional, simplified Chinese. I think they have Korean, Vietnamese, Indonesian, or something. It was a lot. So, how do you think about this news?
With the news, it was very shocking. I mean, I was speechless. For a little bit, I was like, this can't be real. And then, if everywhere you looked on social media, everybody was posting about it, buzzing about it, asking questions within their groups. Um, when I read the news, I was like, oh man, this is fantastic. It's a great way for international fans to enjoy Takarazuka, but I also was very happy that you know Japanese fans were also open-minded and accepted to the fact of wow, this is going to be put out for international fans as well to enjoy in multiple languages. Um, and for those who have seen it or have watched the Beyond Live, um, I won't spoil anything, but there was a certain part where one performer, and you may know who I'm talking about, adapted to the multi-language. She had an ad lib, and I was literally clapping, like watching. I was like, "That's awesome! Thank you so much for the ad lib. I loved it."
Agree, agree. That took me off guard because the last time I heard a Takarazuka performer said something in a language that, like Chinese, was in Takarazuka specials, which was given because it was streamed to like Hong Kong and Taiwanese audiences as well. So they did greet to the audience using Chinese. And that performer was a fan service king there. Big W. So cool to witness that. The fact that she
Mm-hmm.
also said it with so much, I mean, yes. So according to that scene, she was saying it with so much, I don't know how you call it, but there was like this little timid enthusiasm, but she was saying it really quickly. It was kind of very adorable. Just fan service king to that performer indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I do agree. It is such an amazing news that just dropped from nowhere. And I remember I just had to use the platform, even though I mainly share about Yuzakure or Flower Troop. I was also using my platform saying, hey, everyone, check out Beyond Live. Like, this is your maybe your first chance of getting close to a live stream that actually provides subtitles in your language for you to understand it. So go purchase a ticket. And I was also very excited to share the news with people on like that follow my fan page. So yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And also, okay, it would be very interesting if we had to like talk about these things spoiler free, but let's try our best. So after watching James Bond, how did you feel? This is a 2 act, so it's basically meaning that they have around a 30 something minute intermission, but it's a 2 act, so it's a musical. What did you think about this?
So, and that's when I was reading your questions that you sent me, it was kind of hard to answer this question specifically. And I say that with, I mean, with love, but at the same time, having this performance be 2 acts, that's a long time. But I think it was in my, and I even have it written down here, the review, Capricciosa, that technically being Makaze-san's last review, I think was perfect. And I was kind of thinking of along the lines of, okay, Bond was 2 acts. There was no review. It was one big performance. I think, in me personally as a fan, I think it was perfect to have Capricciosa be the last review, because I mean it was top notch. I really enjoy it. I still enjoy it to this day. It's probably one of my favorite reviews. But having Bond be 2 acts, I think was perfect because of the storyline, the character development, the number of characters. I think it was perfect.
Agree. That's actually a very interesting point to add on, because I wouldn't have thought that you would actually use, okay, the comparison like Capricciosa as like her last review. And being that said, it's, you would think it was a nice arrangement that this being a 2 act, but Capricciosa being her last review, that already showed like, maybe I would say her optimum performance in terms of like review performing. And then this would be a show where she could just be full on display on like her acting skills and all that. Perhaps, I don't think this is a spoiler, but I want to talk about a certain scene, which is revealed in news photos. But I find that scene one of the most interestingly laid out, because it was so dramatic and the blocking was amazing. It was a scene where they were in the casino and they were holding these paper cards. And, you know, there was this whole scene going on because apparently it was Yurika-san's Bond and, yeah, versus Kiki's character. So that to me was very interesting, because you see the Soragumi-san, like Soragumi troop members, they were holding all these cards. They were making such a big deal out of one bet. So I find that somewhat the magic of theater, because you can put such a small scene into such a big scale. That was so entertaining and amusing to watch. So how would you comment on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Now that I'm thinking about it after watching it, I was like, wow, the stage presence, the atmosphere, and having that many performers on stage for one scene was amazing. I mean, if you think of the number of people on stage for just that small bit, it was beautiful to watch. A+ for the stage crew, for the dynamic and the stage set and the props. I thought it was great. It was stunning to watch.
Right. And also another thing I would like to add is, obviously, as we mentioned, this is the Taira musical of Yurika-san and Kano-san. So the dynamic between James Bond and Delphine, it was kind of interesting, because I feel like James Bond, as she mentioned also in her Jewels of Takazuka article, that James Bond is someone that, you know, he has like manners, but also can be a little bit flirtatious. It's just like he has this kind of chill vibe that kind of envelopes him. Whereas Delphine is another, well, original character that is an independent woman, and also someone that's very brave and independent. That's something that draws James Bond's attention, which makes her be attractive to him. So how would you talk about like the relationship between James Bond and Delphine, or just about Yurika and Kano's chemistry in that relationship?
Oh man, I'm so glad you asked this, because the relationship with Bond and Delphine, it's kind of like the free-spirited woman kind of falls for the kind of cocky, arrogant guy, and he knows it. He knows what he's doing. He's savvy, and he's like, okay, you can play hard to get, but I know you're gonna fall for me. That's kind of the read I had. I was like, Makaze-san is hitting it to a T. She's portraying that kind of arrogant, savvy type man, and she did perfect. They both did perfect. And then, I mean, obviously Delphine being kind of that free spirited, like, oh, like I won't ever fall for you, but you'll just have you, for those who haven't watched, please go watch it. So I thought they did a fantastic job character wise.
So on to the next question. So this is a 2-act musical, and even you mentioned like Capricciosa as her last review, but actually for a 2-act musical, they would have around 20 minutes, or actually less than 20 minutes, which would be, we call the finale, which is like the review kind of wrap up to the musical itself. And so there were some meaningful tributes to symbolize this as Yurika's last show, maybe Kiki's upcoming succession as a top star, and also because Sushi-san, which is Kotobuki Tsukasa-san, she also is tie-danding in this musical, which she is actually the kubicho of Cosmos Troop and has been there like almost like since Cosmos Troop was established. So she's like one of the core members of Cosmos Troop. So when you watched the finale, did you feel like, oh, this was a great conclusive ending of like, just a wrap up to the previous, very intense musical itself?
It was very emotional. I mean, for me as a fan, and I know for other fans as well, I talked to a few fellow Soragumi fans or mutuals, and I think even if you're not like, even if Soragumi isn't your main troop that you follow, you could really feel and see that emotional energy during the finale. It was very present. But it wasn't one of those emotions of, I'm sitting here sobbing because it's so sad, but it was one of those where you could see it in the performers, just the sheer love and affection and respect that they had. Like you said, Sushi-san, I mean, everybody had such admiration and such respect during that finale. I thought it was perfect. Um, there isn't anything I would change about it. Um, there is one thing I'll keep it spoiler free, like we said, but Sushi-san, I just round of applause. It was very, very good. So
Yeah. And I think there was another part which also, it felt almost, it's not like that kind of feeling of falling in love, but it does feel somewhat similar when all are focused onto a certain subject and then other thing blurs. Okay. So that kind of sensation hit me when I saw Yurika's last solo dance. Um, it kind of gave me goosebumps because the first time I was introduced to Takarazuka, the second show I watched was 2016 Elizabeth. And I know, I haven't been following her since 2016, but it still feels like I've watched her a long time ago. So seeing that one solo dance, from a top star, and you see those photos from back in March, and you get to see it in June. Oh, and yeah, to add on, I actually watched the Cosmos True performance through the live stream service from Hong Kong cinemas, whereas I believe Hailey would have also watched from Beyond Live and also other live stream links. So yeah, watching it in the theater is another experience because at that point you feel like all the attention is on that solo dance and it really hits. I didn't cry, but it does feel like a lot of goosebumps on my arm because you feel like, oh gosh, she's actually wrapping up and she's like being very grateful about the stage. So that for me is very moving to watch. Yeah.
I completely agree. I mean, I Makaze-san, I've Ocean's 11 was really my first performance I've watched of hers, and that's how I got introduced of her and to know her. And being able to go back into her earlier parts of her career to where she is now and watching just her growth of becoming top star, it's been amazing. Um, and I think she knows it and her troop mates knew it as well. She really left a very impressionable mark history wise with Soragumi and Takazuka. But no, I completely agree as well. There was, I mean, many moments in her solo where I was like, this is it. And she knows it, we know it, but man, it's like my heart hurts, but it was very beautiful. Very, very beautiful.
Hello, everyone, and this is Hibiscus editing the episode. Thank you so much for listening to my discussion with Hailey. In the next episode, when we get back, you will listen to our sharing and thoughts on Makase Suzuho-san and also Junhana-san and also other graduating Xian's Thailand performance, which is One Heart at Cosmos Planet, as well as our upcoming expectations for the new Cosmos troupe led by Serika Toa-san. Stay tuned and see you in the next episode.